Not every gun keeps its value. That's just the truth of it. And this past year has made that painfully obvious. If you're like me and have been watching the used market closely, from dealer shelves to online trades, you'll know what I mean. Some guns that were commanding premium prices not long ago are now struggling to get any real offers. It's like the floor dropped out from underneath them. We're not talking about obscure models either. I mean popular guns. Guns that were everywhere. Guns that had good reputations or a strong following. But between market corrections, shifts in demand, changes in legislation, and just plain old consumer behavior, the value of some of these firearms absolutely tanked between August 2024 and now. And it's been hard to watch, especially if you were holding on to one of these thinking it was a long-term keeper. So today, I want to talk about 12 guns that crashed in value over the past year. This isn't some speculative hit list. I'm pulling this together based on what I've seen personally in shops, at shows, on gun forums, and through dealer pricing reports. This is just one person's take based on real-world observations. If you own any of these, don't take it too personally. And hey, if you managed to sell any of these before the drop, congrats. You dodged a bullet. No pun intended. Let's get into it. There was a time not that long ago when the Remington 7600 still had a bit of mystique. It didn't have the flashy action of a lever gun or the speed of a semi-auto, but it carved out a loyal following among hunters, especially in the Northeast. Pump-action rifles are a rare breed, and the 7600 was seen as a practical choice with some heritage behind it. But all that didn't mean much once 2024 rolled around and the market started drying up. Semi-autos got cheaper, bolt actions became more feature-rich, and buyers just moved on. The 7600 found itself stranded, too slow for tactical-minded folks, too outdated for newer hunters, and too common to become collectible. The used market started filling up with them, often from older owners cashing out. Within months, prices took a nosedive. Today, they're still reliable rifles, but in terms of resale value, they've been left behind. Next up is the Marlin 1895. Now this one actually hurts a little. When big-bore lever actions were having their moment a couple of years ago, the 1895 was riding high. The 4570 hype was real, and Marlin's name still carried weight, even as ownership changed hands. But some quality control issues started creeping in, and that shook buyer confidence. Then Ruger stepped in, and while some models got better, others just added confusion to the product line. People didn't know which versions were safe bets anymore. Prices that had spiked during the boom began to settle, and then continued to drop as more used examples hit the market. And let's be honest, most people who bought one during the hype didn't really need a thumper like that. When the excitement faded, so did the demand. Now you can find used Marlin 1895s going for significantly less than they were just a year ago. The Savage Axis is another one that got hit hard, and maybe that's not surprising. It was never supposed to be fancy, just functional. And for a while, it nailed that market. Budget hunters and first-time buyers loved it. But then came the flood. Savage produced these things in huge numbers, especially during the pandemic when gun demand was sky high. Fast forward to late 2024 and the used market was awash with Axis rifles. Meanwhile, competitors started offering entry-level models with better triggers, nicer stocks, and actual upgrades. Ruger, Tikka, even Mossberg stepped in with budget-friendly rifles that didn't feel so stripped down. Suddenly, the Axis just felt dated, and the resale prices reflected that shift. What used to be a good deal is now considered a placeholder until buyers can afford something better. You can pick one up cheap these days, but don't expect to sell it for much later. Then there's the Ruger P95, built like a tank, utterly dependable, and for a time, incredibly affordable. It used to be a go-to recommendation for anyone wanting a solid 9mm on a budget. But the pistol market has changed, and this one didn't evolve. Polymer-framed striker-fired pistols now dominate the space, and the P95's chunky hammer-fired design just didn't age well. It doesn't support optics, isn't modular, and the ergonomics feel clunky compared to what's out there today. Ruger has moved on, and so has everyone else. The result? A flood of trade-ins, all hitting the used market around the same time. It's not that the P95 is bad. It's actually a really solid gun. It's just not what people are looking for anymore. And the market doesn't reward nostalgia when there's no shortage of newer, shinier options. Prices have dropped accordingly, and the P95 is now a bargain bin staple. The Sig Sauer P250 is one of those guns that felt like it arrived too early for its own good. When it was first introduced, the idea of a fully modular handgun platform was still new to most buyers. The interchangeable fire control unit, grip modules, and the ability to change calibers on one serialized component. It was all very forward-thinking. But while the concept was solid, the execution left a lot to be desired. The trigger was long and heavy by modern standards. The ergonomics weren't exactly intuitive for all hand sizes, and the takedown process felt overly complicated compared to its competitors. In hindsight, the P250 was more of a proof of concept than a polished product. Then came the P320, which refined everything the P250 tried to do. With a better trigger, improved handling, and optics-ready options, the P320 quickly eclipsed its predecessor. The P250 suddenly became yesterday's news, and that showed up fast in the resale market. Over the past year, trade-ins have surged as people upgraded to newer striker-fired models. Some folks even traded within the same brand, moving from the P250 to the P320 or other modular pistols that simply do it better. There's nothing inherently wrong with the P250. It still shoots fine, but its value has been gutted by obsolescence. Today, it sits in that strange limbo between outdated and not quite collectible. And unfortunately, that's one of the worst places to be when it comes to resale. Then there's the Heritage Rough Rider, a gun that was always meant to be fun, more than serious. It's the kind of revolver that appeals to new shooters or people nostalgic for cowboy-style single actions. Without the high cost of a real Colt or Ruger, chambered in .22 LR, it's cheap to shoot, easy to own, and light on the wallet. During the pandemic surge, Heritage couldn't make them fast enough. They were flying off the shelves as first guns, range toys, or just something fun to add to the collection. But like so many things that spiked during that panic buying era, the demand didn't last. By late 2024, interest had cooled off significantly. Revolver sales as a whole started declining, and budget options like the Rough Rider took the biggest hit. The truth is, once you've had one for a while, there's not much reason to keep it around. They're not heirlooms, and they're not performance-focused. They're fun, sure, but fun wears off. Combine that with the fact that thousands of these were dumped onto the market during and after the buying boom, and the prices dropped fast. These days, you'll see used Rough Riders listed for barely more than the cost of a few boxes of ammo. They still serve their purpose, but no one's paying a premium for a well-worn .22 single action anymore, moving into a very different category. The Smith & Wesson M&P Shield has a story that's almost bittersweet. When it first came out, it genuinely shifted the landscape for concealed carry handguns. It was slim, easy to conceal, and had the backing of a trusted brand. For years, it dominated the market as the go-to for everyday carry. And even today, it's still a reliable firearm with a good track record, but reliability alone isn't enough anymore. The concealed carry market evolved at a breakneck pace, especially starting in 2018 with the release of guns like the Sig P250. Suddenly, higher capacity and smaller frames became the new standard, optics-ready slides became common, and buyers started expecting modularity and features even in subcompacts. The original Shield, while still a good performer, began to look dated. Smith & Wesson tried to catch up with the Shield Plus and optic-ready variants. But by then, the damage had already been done. Resale values of the original Shield took a dive, not because of a problem with the gun itself, but because it represented an older generation of design. Over the past year, used Shields have become incredibly common, with many owners upgrading or moving on. The market's been flooded, and that naturally drove prices even lower. Finally, we've got the Ruger AR-556, which felt like a solid bargain rifle for a long time. It was built to be accessible, an affordable entry into the AR-15 world from a well-known manufacturer. For the most part, it succeeded. It was simple, reliable, and accurate enough for casual shooting or basic defensive use. But the AR market is a fickle beast. It responds as much to politics and panic as it does to innovation and quality. During periods of uncertainty, these rifles fly off the shelves. But when the political climate calms down and buyers aren't rushing to stock up, demand drops hard. That's exactly what happened over the past year. With fewer perceived threats to gun rights in the national discourse, AR sales took a hit, and budget models like the AR-556 were among the first to feel it. Add to that the sheer number of them already in circulation, and the market quickly became oversaturated. Other brands started offering more features for similar prices: free-float handguards, better triggers, enhanced controls, making the AR-556 feel a bit underwhelming. Buyers looking for their first AR might still consider it, but on the used market, it's no longer commanding respectable prices. There are just too many options now, and too many of these sitting unsold. For current owners, that means resale value has cratered. The Taurus Judge has always been a divisive handgun. On paper, the appeal is obvious. A revolver that shoots both .45 Colt and .410 shells sounds incredibly versatile. It was marketed as a do-it-all tool for home defense, trail carry, and everything in between. But once people started using it more, reality set in. It turned out to be mediocre at everything. The .410 shells lacked power for serious defense. The .45 Colt was underwhelming in accuracy from its short barrel, and the whole gun felt oversized and awkward for what it offered. Still, it had a dedicated following for a while, mostly among folks drawn to its novelty and versatility. But when revolver sales took a steep downturn in 2025, niche models like the Judge got hit hardest. It wasn't just about performance anymore. With more practical handguns offering better capacity, modern features, and easier handling, the Judge quickly fell out of favor. Now, it's one of the easiest revolvers to find on the used market at a steep discount. Then there's the Mossberg Patriot, a bolt-action rifle that was meant to be a working man's hunting gun. Affordable, dependable, and available in a bunch of calibers. The Patriot did what it needed to do without any fuss. For years, it quietly sold well. But as the bolt-action rifle segment evolved, the Patriot didn't. Competing models started offering threaded barrels, better stocks, adjustable triggers, and smoother actions, often for only a little more money. By mid-2024, it became clear the Patriot was being outclassed, even at the entry level. And with so many on the used market, prices slipped quickly. The pandemic production wave didn't help either. A lot of people bought these rifles in 2020, 2021, and by 2025, many had either upgraded or decided they didn't need a second bolt gun. That meant more used Patriots flooding the market, driving prices further down. It's still a capable rifle, but the days of strong resale are behind it. The Kel-Tec Sub2000 is a gun that always seemed cooler in concept than in execution. A folding 9mm carbine that takes common pistol mags and fits in a backpack? That's a winning idea. But then, you actually shoot one. The ergonomics are quirky. The trigger isn't great. And while it's certainly packable, it's not exactly a pleasure to run through long sessions. Still, it had a run of popularity, especially among backpackers and folks looking for truck guns. But as more compact PCCs entered the market, many with better build quality, optics rails, and smoother operation, the Sub2000 began to feel a little dated. In 2024, the folding gimmick wasn't enough anymore. Shooters were asking for modularity, suppressor support, and modern ergonomics. The Sub2000 couldn't deliver, and resale prices reflected that. By mid-2025, they were all over the used racks, and even clean examples weren't pulling the kind of money they used to. Another victim of innovation outpacing novelty. Last but not least, the FN FNS-9. For a while, this was FN's answer to the striker-fired pistol trend. It had solid build quality, decent ergonomics, and ran reliably. Law enforcement agencies picked it up, and civilians gave it a shot as a Glock alternative. But time wasn't kind to the FNS-9. It didn't offer much that was new or exciting. And when FN released the 509 with its modern features, better grip texture, optics-ready options, the FNS line was effectively obsolete overnight. The market reacted fast, agencies moved on, civilian shooters traded up, and the FNS-9 became an afterthought. That flooded the secondary market with used units, and the price dropped accordingly. You can still find them today for far less than they once sold for new, often in excellent condition. But interest is low, and it doesn't look like it'll rebound. FN made a solid gun here. It just got left behind in a segment where progress moves quickly and unforgivingly. The past year has been a rough ride for a lot of guns that once held steady value. Some of the drops were predictable, the natural result of shifting consumer preferences or newer, better models hitting the scene. Others were surprising, showing just how sensitive the market can be to timing, trends, and oversupply. But if there's one takeaway from all of this, it's that the gun world moves fast. What's hot today might be cold tomorrow, especially in categories where technology and features evolve quickly. If you've owned one of these guns and watched its value sink, you're not alone. And if you managed to scoop one up at the bottom of its dip, then maybe you came out ahead. Either way, I'd love to hear your stories. Did you lose money on any of these? Or did you score a great deal when others were panic selling? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy content like this, real talk about the state of the gun market, without the hype, consider subscribing. There's more coming, and I'd love to have you along for the ride.